Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for my AMAP Friday. Got a couple questions today from different places, different people. If you're watching the recording, next week I will not have AMAP Friday because we have Pilates at the Pillow, and thus I will be in the middle of a workshop conference during next week's Friday. So that's what I'm going to be doing next week. So don't come next week. All right, let's see here. Let me look at the questions for you. I have them written down here. Okay, so first one is, how does Pilates use gravity, right? And gravity in Pilates, which is interesting. And one of the things to think about is that, for me, that question, it's always... we're always in gravity. It doesn't disappear. I guess, if you go out in space, it does. Or you go in water, it gets less, the effects on the body, but it's always there. And so when you think about that, it's really a function of how do we move, how have we evolved in our bodies and our systems, right? And, the muscular system is a body system. I mean, we talk about the lymphatics, we talk about the cardiovascular, but the muscles are really a system as well. And, it's all interconnected with the brain, and the brain makes everything work and function. But it's the ability to do that in gravity, right? Because there's pressure, so we have to be able to work against that and do those different things. And so one of the things to me is that what Joe did is his understanding of the process of stability mobility, right? Because if we don't have, it's not just, we have the skeletal system, right? So it's not just the muscular system, it's the muscular and the skeletal system that really work together with the nervous system and whatnot to let us move, myofascial, all those different things. But what happens is that if we didn't have a skeleton, we'd be just a blob jiggling around on the floor, right? We wouldn't be able to do much because there would not be much stability. So, and the job of the muscle is to either stabilize or mobilize, right? The bones. That's what it does. And it really does both. And it does it consistently in relationship to gravity and in relationship to position of the body in space. So, because when you're moving, it's always changing. It doesn't stay static, and it's always differentiating. And part of what Joe's system does is it takes us through really organic movement patterns and sequences, and it allows us to switch from one to the other and back and forth. And as you get more advanced into the more advanced exercises, it's combinations. So, you do basic functions, and then you do, different planes of motion, and then you do combinations, and you do all these different things. So when we do that, one of the things that he does is he understood that. So when you do this spring setting based on the way he set it, on his apparatus, and that changed over time, little things here and there, different things changed. We know he started with 7, and he ended up with 4, and he didn't always use 4, and there's gears, and so there's all those variables, right? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here talking about all that. That's really should be in your training. But that's one of the things that he did. He understood that process, and so when we're talking about Pilates and gravity, it's always in gravity. We're always in gravity, and it's how we learn how to move in gravity well and controlled, and that's, contrology. So Joe's process is being able to do that, right? So that's one of the things that he's able to do and he wanted to do. And so I think that's, a basic understanding of that. So if you want more, I'm looking for the next question here. If you want more, I think, I have different workshops and I do other things. Teacher training, you can bridge. There's different ways to do that to get a better understanding, because I've spent the last 30 years trying to understand these relationships. And it's not just gravity. It's our control of that. And where does that come from? It's the balance, and it's built into Pilates. I mean, one of the things to think about is when they do research on balance, what they do is they put you on a platform, and then they move the platform, and they see how you respond, and that's what they measure, and that's how they do things. Well, what's a reformer? It's a moving platform, and you move on that platform in a lot of different configurations in body positions, right? So you're challenging the vestibular system, you're challenging the motor control, right? How it all integrates. So you're doing all those things at the same time. Okay? All right, so let's see here. Where's this? There it is. So the next question was, how do you think Pilates will develop in the future? Obesity and lack of movement in our population will change Pilates to osteo, and physio equals Pilates. So I think the person who wrote that I think it was translated, so there might be a slight translation, but I think I understand what was being asked. And basically, I think one of the things to think about, hi Angela, one of the things to think about is, yes, the obesity. If you look at Elaine Ewing put a physical culture video. She's been doing a lot of historical videos and things like that. She put one up, and somebody made a comment, about that's not how people are today. Well, they're correct, but in Joe's time, the population was not half as obese and morbidly obese as it is today. If you look at the numbers that they talk about and what they use, it was like maybe 10%, and now it's 40 to 50%, I think, or maybe even higher, depending on which one you read and stuff. So, and that's a lot. It has to do with the types of food that's changed, right? When I was a kid, long time ago, 60 years ago, small kid, you didn't have convenience stores. You didn't have a store in every corner that was stocked full of sugar and carbohydrates and all this other, and sodas and all this other stuff. That started when I was like in my early teens, 7-Elevens and the Wawas and things like that. They weren't really there. And so, and it just wasn't the case. And at the supermarket, when you go out, it wasn't lined with sugar. It's all these things. So we have there's all the what we eat, and how we eat, and how they use the food system to make money is because if you look at almost everything, I have family history of diabetes. My grandmother had issues. My father. I have high sugar, and so I look at, the label, and when you look at the label, almost everything that's processed has added sugars. And why? Because it's sweet, you like it, then you go, oh, I like that flavor, I'm gonna, buy that again. You get it, I always say sugar is kind of like, it's kind of like heroin, right? It's a plant that's processed, it's a white powder, just one that kills you a lot faster than the other one, but the other one eventually, if you look at the amount of people that have diabetes and the chronic diseases, and then the things that causes, right? When you look at diabetes and you look at the issues that diabetes itself causes, the neuropathies and the heart issues and everything else, that's a big issue. So, but I'm going on one of my tangents. Okay, so, do I think it's going to be what do I think will develop in the future? Well, if you look at what's happening today, right, with Pilates, where is it? It's not Pilates. At least not what Joe taught and what he said he wanted to be taught and wanted his system to be. His name is everywhere. His method is very few places. I get a lot of, every time I have a conversation that's a dialogue on social media where somebody doesn't like what I've said, and especially when it comes to like science. Quite often, what happens is they go, "Oh, you're the guy who tried to trademark Pilates." Well, I didn't try to trademark. Ramana trademarked it. I bought it, and I helped Ramana do what she wanted to do to try to protect it, and we ended up losing. And when I lost, I said, basically what's happening today was going to happen. You're going to have all sorts of things, and it's going to be terrible. And in a lot of ways, to me, it is very terrible, especially what you see with social media now, because now everybody is putting everything out there. But, Pilates has gone up and down and up and down in popularity. This is like the third time since I've been, dealing with Pilates. And we know that Joe had articles written and other things like that before that. So I think there's this constant ebb and flow, because it's a system that it's become a profession. And if you teach well, and again, I'm not going to get into the classical, contemporary, archival now, all the variables. Everybody needs to exercise, and if you're having people exercise, it's a great thing. And if they can do it, and they're going to do it, and great. There's plenty of, with 40 to 50% of the population, having issues. We all need to exercise. Everybody does. And if you look at the science, humans, when we don't exercise, we go downhill, and things start to not work as well, and it's a problem. And that's why, one of the things about retirement, right, is what? People say, "Oh, I'm going to stop working," and then they stop doing stuff. And when you look at age, and you see people as they get older, they lose muscle, function, they lose muscle mass, all these different things. Well, what is that? What's happening? A lot of that's because if you look at most 60 to 70 or 80-year-olds, are they anywhere close to doing the kind of movement and exercise, daily life things that they did when they were 20 or 30? When I was 20 and 30, I was dancing, I was hiking, I was this, I was that, I was doing all those things. I don't do as much of that. I try to walk every day, or at least, a couple times a week, and I have a stationary bike, and I have Pilates, and, I do a little, there's a little bit of aerobic. Joe had a stationary bike, and we know that he ran and he walked. Same thing. He didn't just do Pilates. He did other things as well. So that's something to consider. So everybody needs it. The difference is, what I see today being called Pilates, I don't see any purpose. I don't see any reason. Joe had a very specific way of working with people and putting it together. And so I think, what do I see in the future of Pilates? I it's going up. It's going to come back down again. And when it comes back down, we'll see if the the franchises and all those things last. Because if we look at historically as well, with gyms, that are franchise and things like that, they come, they get very popular, they grow, they expand, and then what happens? It starts to go the other way. So we'll see. What I've always said is that, everybody needs to exercise, and what Ramana used to say, even if it's based on Pilates, it's still better than all the other stuff that's out there. And I agree with that as a physical therapist and everything else. There's very few things. So I'm not against necessarily, anything, as long as it's not dangerous and harmful. And for me, if I'm going to spend my time, energy, and effort doing an exercise, I want it to have purpose. I want it to have a history that I know that when you do it, you'll get certain results. And we know that when you do what Joe did, it works. At least I've spent 30-some years, using the system myself, my patients as PT, and, as studios and as a teacher. So I know the same thing that Joe said. It works that way. Now, do I have a research study that shows that works? No, I don't. That's my personal clinical experience. And I know a lot of other people have personal clinical experience with the same. And Ramana said the same. Joe said the same. There's that progression. So I think that what's going to happen is, for those who are really interested, and it provides them what they need as the teacher, and it provides the clients what they need, and if they're happy and they're good, and whether it's contemporary, classical, archival, whatever variation you're going to have, you should still be able to work, because a lot of that's by word of mouth, and if you help people, they will continue to come. Now, we haven't been through a depression, so that may change things if that really happens. And again, it depends on the countries, but there's countries that are not half as wealthy as the European and America and other places, and they still have Pilates. They don't charge as much, they don't make as much, but they're still doing it. So there's always a way. And if it's done well and done right, that's something that can happen, I think. And when I say done well and done right, what's right for the body. And I personally think that Joe's work is that way. So I think it's going to continue. It may not be as popular, and it'll go up and down, but those people who do it, it'll still be there. So that's something to think about. All right, let me just see here. So then it says, will it change Pilates to osteo and physio? Well, is that what Pilates? I don't think. And osteo, I believe they're talking about osteopathy, which is manual manipulation, right? To a certain degree, whether it's there's joints, there's viscera, there's myofascial, there's the myofascial work. That all comes from the osteopaths. Ida Rolf, and like I said, all this fascial stuff today, and everybody's trying to do this stuff, but that came from Ida Rolf, who used to lecture for the osteopaths. She used her son as a model for Sutherland, who did all the cranial work when he would come to New York. And she started with yoga, and then she moved into the Rolfing. And what she did, she was very aggressive, and she would go in there and manipulate the tissues and do all sorts of things. The structural integration is much more myofascial based, and it's not as intense and as straining. But that all came from the myofascial work, came from the osteopaths. The strain, counter strain, the cranial work, the visceral work, that's all osteopathic. So they were very progressive in the hands-on manual work. And if you look at the history, in Joe's day in the 1800s, before the First World War, gymnastics and massage and that type of thing, that was all intertwined, right? And you have to realize that in the late 1800s, there was a foundational shift in healthcare in the sense of medicines. There was many different medical schools of different theories and thoughts. The MD, the allopathic medicine, became the prominent, dynamic, and primary one. And a lot of that was, related to politics and money and everything else. Like even today in New York State, I can't take a prescription from a chiropractor because I'm underneath the medical system, and they were not. They were separate, and they were frowned upon and looked down upon, and all sorts of. That's a whole nother story. But what I'm trying to say here is that in Joe's day, you had medical gymnasts, right? So they were people who did manual work, and they did exercise in manual. But when the First World War came, you had the physical education, and they took them into physical therapy. And then what happened is they diverged. So you had physical therapy with patients, and then you had exercise with sports and athletics, and they got separated. But in Joe's day, that was all intertwined and together. So it was a different thing. And Joe did hands-on. We know that he did manual work. He took people in the back room. He did hands-on work. We see pictures of him at the pillow doing different things. So it's something that he did. Okay, so will it go there? I don't see it necessarily. And again, that's going to be based on the country and the state, because in the U.S., medical hands-on practice is regulated to keep the quacks and the crazy and all this other stuff that people promise, and now there's things that restrict that, and that's most places. To protect the consumer, because otherwise you could say anything. So, and you have to get trained and all that type of stuff. So if it gets to that point, it's going to be different for every state in the U.S., right? And the problem is it's also politics, because what do you have? You have the chiropractors, you have the osteopaths, you have the physical therapists, you have the physical medicine, you have the athletic trainers. Well, they all do a variation of exercise and hands-on and something, depending on what their training is and where they are, they have something so to have another group come in and try to basically, it's a turf war, and they're going to fight that in the government. And so it's not going to be easy at all, I don't think. Maybe, but I doubt it. It took, PTs almost 100 years to be able to get a national test. that was recognized, and even within that national test, different states have different passing rates. And they, because I remember when I graduated, you could graduate and not be able to work in New York, but you go work in another state because it had a lower passing rate. So those are the things. So there's all that stuff. So where's Pilates going to be? Is it going to be osteophysio? I don't believe so. I don't think that that's something that would happen per se. I just don't see that. And I don't think that the osteos or the physical therapists are going to, necessarily try to do that either. But maybe, because I know that, there's, with physical therapy now, a lot of they're coming out with DPTs. They're all doctors now. And if there's not enough evidence-based for a technique, they don't teach it anymore, a lot of places. Or they say, you shouldn't really use it because there's nothing to show that it really does what it's claimed to do. So if that's the case, you have to realize that it's going to be an issue, right? Because that can happen. So, all right, hold on, let me just find this last thing here. One more, sorry about this. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so then obesity and lack of movement in our population will change the Pilates. Okay, and then it says, how do you think Pilates will develop in the future, right? Well, I guess I've sort of answered both of those, right? I think I have. So anybody have any questions? If you have a question right now about anything I just talked about and you'd like to discuss it, put it on here and I'll talk about it. If you have questions that you'd like me to talk about at a later date, feel free to DM me. I will add it to the list. I've got. I'm not doing it next week. I've got questions for the week after, and one question for the week after that. So I still have some room in the next couple of weeks. So if there's something that somebody would like to send me and ask a question about, I'd be happy to try to answer that for you. In my understanding as a PT, as a 35-year Pilates person, all that type of stuff, business. There can be business, it can be exercise, it can be, biomechanics, ergonomics, all that stuff, anatomy, you name it. I'm happy to try to help everybody out and understand, the work a little bit better. At least the way I've learned to understand it from my, years and years of practice, at research and study and that type of thing. So let me know. Okay, I don't think I see anybody asking a question. So if there's no questions, I'm going to end this for now. And thank you for joining me. And a couple things. I teach classes on, right now we're not doing Mondays for next couple weeks. We have on Tuesdays, at 12:30, I teach my Dynatonics. You're welcome, Pilates. You're welcome. I teach my Dynatonics, which is balance work, more than just Pilates. Something I've been developing for a long time, a couple decades now. As well as then after that, I do the resistor workout, which is you don't need a resistor. You can have a wall unit or a Cadillac, and arm springs, leg springs. So that's something you're interested in. That's on Tuesdays. You can go to my Linktree /Sean_Gallagher, and you can sign up and register there if you'd like to join. And again, if you know anybody else who you think would benefit or be interested in what I'm doing here with the AMAP Fridays, let them know. I put this on the Pilates Source YouTube channel, usually within a day or two. Sometimes a little longer. This week, maybe a little longer, just because I'm getting ready for Pilates at the Pilates next weekend. But this whole sequence, all the ones I've done so far, and they're still going to be there, and we keep adding to that as well. So it's a growing resource for historical as well as these type of things, and I've done a lot of stuff there. Okay, so thanks for joining, and I will see you hopefully in 2 weeks, because I will not be doing AMAP Friday next week. So remember that. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining.